Grief makes you throw things away. That morning, my son almost threw away the truth. The morning my son threw my mother's journal into the trash, I was standing close enough to hear the soft thud it made against the plastic bag, and something inside me broke clean in half. "Dad, it's just an old recipe book," Marcus said, not even looking up from his phone. "We've been going through Grandma's stuff for 3 days. We can't keep everything." He was 31 years old, my son, tall like me, stubborn like his grandfather, and at that moment, completely wrong in the way that only confident people can be. I reached into the trash bag without a word and pulled it out. The journal was the size of a hardcover novel, bound in dark green leather that had gone soft and creased at the corners like the skin around my mother's eyes in her final years. The cover had no title, just a small brass clasp, mostly tarnished, that she had kept locked during my entire childhood. When she died 3 weeks earlier at the age of 87, we found the key on a thin chain around her neck, tucked beneath her hospital gown, close to her heart. I had never questioned what was inside. My mother, Eloise Bertrand, was a woman who cooked from memory and kept her private thoughts to herself. I assumed it was exactly what Marcus called it, a collection of handwritten recipes, maybe some pressed herbs, nothing of consequence. But when I turned the first page, I didn't find a recipe, I found a name. Property of Eloise Marguerite Voss, 1958. Voss was not our family name. Bertrand was. Eloise had been a Bertrand since 1961, the year she married my father, Raymond. I had never heard the name Voss spoken once in my entire 58 years of life. I sat down on my mother's kitchen floor, on the same black and white checkered tile she had mopped every Saturday morning, and I started reading. My brother, Gerald, found me there an hour later. Gerald was 3 years older than me, 61, the kind of man who had spent 4 decades as a high school history teacher and believed that his professional relationship with the past made him qualified to speak on all matters historical. He read over my shoulder for less than a minute before forming a firm opinion. "Probably nothing," he said. "Women kept journals. It doesn't mean anything. It has a different last name, Gerald. Could be a maiden name from a first marriage, could be anything. Don't go constructing a mystery out of sentiment." He patted my shoulder in that brotherly way that had always managed to feel slightly condescending. "Let's get back to the furniture." I nodded. I folded the journal carefully and placed it in my jacket pocket. And then, while Gerald argued with Marcus over whether the dining table was worth anything, I walked quietly to my car. Thomas Hale ran an antique appraisal shop on a side street in the older part of the city, sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a store that sold exactly the kind of art no one ever bought. I had driven past it dozens of times without once stopping. A colleague at work had mentioned his name once in the context of a grandfather's pocket watch, said the man was unfashionably honest, which meant he told you the truth even when the truth was disappointing. He was in his mid-60s, Thomas Hale, with the kind of face that had been deeply lived in, a broad forehead, a close-cropped silver beard, and eyes the pale grey of old newsprint. He wore a burgundy cardigan that had seen better decades and a pair of reading glasses permanently pushed up onto his forehead. The shop smelled like cedar and linseed oil and faintly of pipe smoke, though I saw no pipe. "I'm not sure this is the right place," I said, setting the journal on his glass counter. "It might not be a formal antique, but I don't know who else to ask." He didn't reach for it immediately. He looked at me first, in that measured way some people have, as if deciding whether you were worth his time or merely wasting it. "Tell me what you know," he said. So I told him, my mother, the green leather, the name Voss, the key worn around her neck like a secret she had agreed to carry alone, the year written inside, 1958. She would have been 19 years old. Thomas Hale listened with his hands folded on the counter. When I finished, he said nothing for a moment. Then he carefully, almost reverently, pulled on a pair of thin cotton gloves and opened the journal. He read for a long time. I stood on the other side of the counter and watched his expression the way you watch a doctor's face during an examination, looking for signals he might not be ready to speak aloud. His brow shifted. Once, He made a small sound, not quite a word, and turned back 2 pages to read something a second time. After perhaps 40 minutes, he closed the journal. "Mr. Bertrand," he said, "your mother was an extraordinary woman." "What's in it?" "To begin with what you're probably not expecting, there are recipes, but they are not what anyone would call ordinary recipes." He removed his glasses from his forehead and placed them properly on his face, then looked at me. From the handwriting and the ink composition, I'd placed the first third of this journal at approximately 1958 to 1961. During those years, your mother documented what appear to be original variations on traditional Creole dishes that, based on what I can see here, predate by several years the cookbook publications that were later credited with popularizing these variations. He paused. If authenticated by a culinary historian, this journal could represent the original documented source for several dishes that are today considered regional classics. I stared at him. "She never told anyone." "No," he said, "she did not." He turned to a page near the middle and laid the journal open carefully. "But the recipes are perhaps the smaller part of what's here." He showed me a section that was written in a noticeably different hand, still my mother's, I thought, but cramped and urgent, as if written quickly or under some kind of pressure. "These pages," Thomas said, "are not recipes, they are letters, written but never sent, to a person she refers to only as P." He looked at me steadily. "And they describe a legal situation, a property dispute involving land in Louisiana that your mother apparently witnessed as a young woman under the surname Voss. She describes herself as a witness to documents she was asked to sign under circumstances she found troubling." He tapped the page gently. "If these accounts are accurate, Mr. Bertrand, your mother may have been the only surviving witness to a property transfer that, depending on what happened afterward, could still be legally relevant today." The shop felt very quiet. "What do you mean, legally relevant?" "I mean," he said carefully, "that if the property she describes was transferred under the conditions she writes about here, and if the land in question still exists and is still in dispute, this journal could be documentary evidence." He took his glasses off again and set them on the counter. "I'm not a lawyer, and you'll need one before you do anything further, but I've been doing this work for 38 years, and I've held a lot of things that people assumed were worthless." He looked at the journal. "This is not worthless." I drove home with the journal on the passenger seat, and I thought about my mother standing in that kitchen every Saturday morning, mop in hand, the key hanging beneath her shirt. She had carried a locked book for 65 years. She had cooked for us from memory because the memory was in the journal, and the journal was locked. I thought about what Gerald had said, probably nothing. I thought about what Marcus had said, it's just an old recipe book. I called my brother from the driveway. He answered on the third ring, impatient in the way that men become when they have already decided a conversation will not be worth their time. "You need to come over," I said. "The furniture." "Gerald," I looked at the journal on the seat beside me. Mom wasn't who we thought she was. There was a long pause. "What does that mean?" I picked up the journal and held it in both hands, felt the soft give of the leather, the weight of 65 years pressed between its pages. "It means we owe her an apology," I said, "and then we owe her a lawyer."